Hi, thank you, everybody. And thank you, Jan, for inviting me to speak. It's kind of interesting. I realized I retired from the healthcare industry in July of last year. So I've spoke a lot of times at the healthcare industry. This is my first time officially speaking with my new hat on, and I get to wear my cowboy boots. It's a whole different environment for me. So I'm super excited to talk about sustainability in the vineyard, though. Break it down a little bit, and I have a couple fun examples. But our winery has been certified sustainable since 2016. I'll talk about the process we went through and show you some fun pictures. So that's my husband, Michael. He is up there working in the winery right now as we speak. We're a small mom and pop winery. We moved to Ramona in 2004, started making wine in 2005, put our first vineyards in 2006, and have evolved since then, making the decision to go commercial in 2010, opening our tasting room in 2012. And we're now in the process of building a new tasting room and hope to open that in time for harvest this year. So we make handcrafted wines, primarily from San Diego County grapes. At this point, mostly nearly 100% Ramona grapes. Every once in a while, if there's an opportunity to get some great grapes from outside of the community, we'll do that. We've partnered with some of the larger wineries. Our affiliate from time to time will bring down Chardonnay from Monterey. So we've been able to get a little bit of that, but pretty much San Diego and Ramona grapes. So again, Ramona, I think everybody's pretty familiar with Ramona, but what you might not know is there are about 40 wineries in Ramona now and over 100 vineyards. And we're actually a American viticulture area. So we got our designation in 2006 as an AVA and are consistently bringing home gold medals. So we've won gold medals at Sunset Magazine competition, which, you know, for us being a very small winery, we do about 12 to 1,500 cases a year. That's a big deal. We've won double gold at Sonoma Grand Harvest, again, against the big wineries. And wine competitions are done, they're called double blind. So the judges don't know what they're tasting or who the maker is. They just know the varietal in the year. So kind of interesting going on up there. So I invite you guys, if you haven't been up to Ramona, to come up and taste the wines. So what I'm going to talk about today, and I think is the difference in the types of farming. And again, I think there's a place for every type of farming. There's conventional farming, which is really focused on the output. So how much are we making? What can we put out from our property? Organic, really focused on what goes into our property. Biodynamic, I'm just learning about that. Ironically, my neighbor, one property over from me has a biodynamic vineyard. So very interesting. And then sustainable. And this is where I think it's important to learn about sustainable because it's much more encompassing. So it's actually looking at, you know, thresholds, outcomes, focus on treatment of the land, the environment, the community. And I'll show you some more about that. I thought this was a great slide. Basically, it says, because it's a little hard to read in the back, if you're enthusiastic about the environment, sustainable wines will taste even better when you think about the reduced environmental impact. So again, just reiterating what I just said, in the simplest terms, organic winemakers focus on the purer process, less exposure to chemicals. Sustainable winemakers place a priority on being environmentally friendly, socially responsible, and economically sound. Biodynamic wine creators make organic wines using farming processes that align with the lunar calendar and involve specific soil treatments. So big difference there. And I think terms that get thrown around a lot. Sustainable seems to be quite the buzzword these days. So I really encourage people, if they're looking at sustainability and sustainable wines, to ask the question, are they certified? Because it's really easy to say you're sustainable. It's really difficult to get certified. And that's all. I'll walk you through some examples of ours. So again, where does sustainability meet? It's environmentally sound, economically feasible, and socially equitable. So it's, you know, how do we take care of our employees? What type of things do we do in the community? So our particular certification is a statewide certification. It's through the California Sustainable Wine Growing Alliance, and it's located in San Francisco. It's much more common to see wineries certified sustainable in Sonoma, Napa, Northern California. In San Diego County, we are the only one. There are two that I know of in Temecula. And then as we go up, it's more common. Some areas like Lodi also have their own sustainability standards, but the CWSA is the standard for the state of California. And again, it's just, we have some points from that: high standards of sustainable practices, enhancing education, and demonstrating, again, working with the neighborhood, with the community and stakeholders. This is the actual book. If you come up to the winery, we have a copy of it in the tasting room for people to see, because it's pretty impressive. It's a big, thick book. It's probably 3-4 inches thick. It's actually divided into 16 different chapters that we're evaluated on. So we're looked at our business strategy, our viticulture, our soil management, water management, pest management, the quality of the wine, ecosystem management, energy efficiency, water conservation and quality, material handling, solid waste reduction, sustainable purchasing. So for example, I was at a workshop last night after our workshop yesterday, and talking to the gentleman that we get our corks from, and they're grown in a sustainable farm in Portugal. So learning how the corks are treated, processed, how the trees are taken care of was really interesting, and plays into our sustainability, because we pay a little bit more for our corks, but I know they're coming from a sustainably farmed cork farm in Portugal. So human resource, I mentioned our employees a minute ago, neighbors and community, and air quality and climate protection. So all things that just really fit in line with what we've been talking about these 2 days. Just a quick little picture, kind of talks a little bit more about those. Some details on the California Wine Institute, and you will have resource packages available, I believe, after the presentation, where you can see a little bit more about this. But this really just talks about how the California Wine Institute has the largest certified sustainable practice in the state of California. And it's not region specific, but is for the entire state. So what goes into sustainability? Well, there's a lot. So, and we're going to talk a little bit about a couple of our examples and what we have focused on at our winery and vineyards. So one, obviously we focus on pest management. So looking at what can we do in the vineyard on the property to encourage a healthy ecosystem, realizing that the more native plants we have, the more native bugs we have, and the more native bugs we have, the more native birds we have, and the birds will be eating the pests. So we're trying to encourage an environment where we're using the birds to eat the pests rather than spraying for it. Biodiversity, we've done a lot on our property to ensure we have areas where we don't invade the wild corridors or the areas where the natives are. Air quality control, cover crops, I'll talk a little bit about that in our next example. Water management, soil health, and renewable energy. So just a couple things that have been important to us. And then here's an actual example from the book. And so you can see that for, or maybe you can't in the back, but for 2021, we were evaluated on our energy efficiency. And you can see that there are 3 different areas there that we're evaluated on, and they looked at overall how we use energy. And for us in particular, we have a wind turbine, we have 39 solar panels, and we have backup batteries, and we just installed a backup generator. So we were able to score a 4 in that in terms of how we were doing. And the rating system starts at a 1, works up to a 4. And one of the things I always like to tell people is it's a progression. Nobody starts out all 4s. You start out as 1s, 2s, and then you work your way up through the process. And every year we meet with an auditor. My auditor is scheduled to come down in the beginning of June. And we spend a few hours going through everything, showing examples, and then figuring what our action plan is for the next year. So for a good example of that is a couple of years ago, my action plan included installing the backup battery. So prior to that, I really couldn't track how much solar versus wind we were using and when we were doing it. And now we've installed the backup batteries. I have an app on my phone, and I can track when we're using energy, and we're looking for ways to continue to reduce that.
Are you creating more than you're using?
We are not yet. Some months, well, not consistently. We do have months where we're breaking even or right about 0. We've had 1 month where we've actually put energy back on the grid and not had to pay for it.
You are still connected to the grid.
We are connected to the grid. What we do is we disconnect every day at 2 o'clock. We go to our batteries and we run off our batteries during the peak time. And about 10 o'clock at night, we click back onto the grid. So we try and not use energy off the grid during those peak times. And we're still kind of playing with that, like what's the right time? You know, how long can we use it before we need to click back onto the grid? But that's one example. Just a little more information there about integrated pest management. And there, again, we're looking at not relying on pesticides, but rather on creating biodiversity and plant diversity. I already talked a bit about that. So I'm going to go on to the next example. So then this again is an example from the certification process. So you can see this one is on vineyard water management. And it's been deemed as something that's climate smart, a climate smart hotspot, and a high impact area. So each of the areas in the certification book that I talked about, and there are hundreds of them, they are evaluated on, are they climate smart, are they a hotspot, and are they high impact? So this one in particular was, let me get in closer because it's small for me too, was about watering. And this is a great example of, we went from, when we first got certified sustainable, we were watering traditional farming. Water ran Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Didn't care, water Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And that was okay for year one. And so our action plan for that year was to learn about what the plants actually need and take a more active role in watering. So for year two, our goal was to walk the vineyard, look at the plants, see if they need water, are they stressed, are they okay? And then water based on what the plant looked like it needed. That was fine for year two. Year three, we went into, okay, we need to actually start having some data. So I applied for an EQIP grant, got it. I think Lance came out and actually did my irrigation evaluation. And we got the EQIP grant to install soil tensiometers. So we have tensiometers now in the vineyards at 2, 3, and 4 feet. And it's broadcast over radio waves, I guess, to our computers, and I can run a report and actually see what the pressure is in the vines. And it enabled us to move further forward in the process we're now for, because we're using science to water. And you know, that sounds great, it's a wonderful thing. But a great example is that year that we got that certification, installed the materials, it's referred to in Ramona as the year the grapes died, because on July 6th, it got to 116. We had these crazy winds come through Ramona, and my neighbors a mile from me lost 50% of their crop. But because we were watering based on soil tensiometers and what the plant actually needed, we were okay. So we only lost about 5% of our crop. So just a great example of how the science actually helped us be better farmers. And part of sustainability, again, goes back to being economically viable. So all great stuff, but if at the end of the time I can't produce a crop and sell it, then I can't stay in business. So that was a great example for us of the importance of what we had learned and how we had changed our practices.
How did it change your water use, up or down?
It's definitely gone down slowly over the years. And we've got another grant from NRCS, and we've put in silt basins. So our vineyards are slanted like this. So we now have silt basins where we capture the water. I'm working with Megan to try and do some other stuff on the property to capture water and keep it on the property. So this is another great example, and it kind of goes into what Joel was talking about. When we first started the certification process, I was like, great, and some of you may have heard this example, is cover crops. Sounds wonderful. I want to plant cover crops. So I did all my research, found that crimson clover was the perfect cover crop for vineyards. Well, not in San Diego, but I thought it was. So I planted it, whole vineyard, planted crimson clover. The only place it survived was in the grow tubes, where it was the drip line was watering the grapevines. So everywhere else died, didn't work. And so, you know, it was a failure. We actually were kind of embarrassed about it because I was talking about what a great thing it was. And then as we started to learn more, we realized that the best cover crop for our vineyards is actually natives. And so residential natives. So now we see a mixture of sage, a lot of mustard, different kinds of flowering plants. And so our goal, my sustainable action for this year on my action plan, is to actually go into the vineyard and map what those plants are and start to identify. But I've been trying to educate my fellow growers up in Ramona, because if you think about how much time and effort you spend to take out the native plants, get the soil ready, buy the seeds. That's why I was asking you about the seed questions. Put the seeds in, put that down, water them, and you're continually fighting the natives that want to come back anyway. And so it makes a lot more sense to do that. And one of the things that was really interesting, again, back to when Lance came out, was he taught us how mustards were actually beneficial for vineyards. So because the roots go down, they create a pathway for the water, and they also, nematodes don't like them. So it's helpful to have in our vineyards. And I'm having an ongoing discussion with another neighbor, a couple vineyards down, because he hates it and he's always out there pulling it out. So he spends so much time and effort to pull out his mustard. And I'm like, you're kind of defeating yourself. So just again, another example of working through the sustainability process. So what do? We also do a lot of stuff, a lot of education. We've worked at Solano Center. We've had backyard chicken classes. We've worked with Jan and Joel and their team with having classes at the winery. We've done irrigation classes recently. We were a test site for some training. So we're just looking at how can we take this education. For me, I'm when I retired, I went back on the Ramona Valley Vineyard Association board, and I'm now the education chair. So I'm trying to bring new ways of thinking about things to a group of pretty traditional, conventional farmers. So it's been a challenge, but I'm starting to see people start, when I give a great example, like the cover cropping. Or another really great example is using the UC Davis heat index. Conventional farming, I would spray my vineyard every 14 days. But what I know is if the temperature gets to 95 degrees for more than 2 hours, the mold spores for powdery mildew are going to die. So if I watch the heat index, we can pretty much, I think we sprayed twice last year. So just educating people on there's different ways to manage your vineyard that may be not only better for the environment, but easier on the farmer and more cost effective in the long run. So. And I'm wrapping up here. So again, sustainability is to place the concept of sustainability into wine grape growing. It's environmentally sound, socially equitable, and economically feasible. So I have a really quick video that pulls it all together. And I might need some help watching this. I was afraid it would launch from this one. Yeah, that one's not launching. Yep, that's it.
I don't know why it's not sharing.
Oh, here we go.
It is not going on
Oh.
the screen.
Yeah.
1 second, I need to go to this. This is a Windows problem.
Well, he's doing that. Any questions?
Sorry.
Any more questions? Yes.
Do you have an organic fungicide?
No.
Is there one?
I don't know because we're not certified organic. My guess is probably. We are starting. Oh, Lance knows. Biling?
Sulfur.
Oh, yes. Good point. Yeah.
There's hydrogen peroxide. There's a lot of different registered products.
Yeah. So stylet oil. That's
Yeah,
one we
salad
use.
oil.
Yeah. And we're also starting to play with using something that I would say 99% of vineyards spray something called metacloprid. It's being traced back to colony collapse. So we're using a new product now called Severin to see if we can use that in our vineyards and still control the glass stealing sharpshooters, but not damage the potential beak.
Mentioned financial feasibility. How about financial profitability? Have you found the sustainable label or brand to be able to generate more revenue from the sale of your wine because of that.
Absolutely. We have people that seek us out because we're certified sustainable. And it's funny because we've been working at this I've been working at it for 10 years now. And when we first started, it was kind of like, oh, that's unusual. But now it's really common. And we have people who come to our winery because of that.
A lot of the way to purchase sustainable
Yes.
grown wine
Hmm.
versus conventional.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Can you tell us where you are?
Sure. I'm located, if you're familiar with Ramona, if you just go straight through Ramona, 3 miles on the 78 on the left-hand side, 23578 Highway 78. And I have business cards if anybody wants one, and they're good for 2-for-1 tastings too. Yes.
I am curious on the Ramona wine growing area. Is there something distinctive about the grapes and the wine that come out of that area that distinguishes you, differentiates you from other wine growing areas such as Temecula and Napa on that?
Yeah.
So what would they be?
So for an AVA to be designated, it does need to be unique. So Ramona's got, we've got the ocean influences, we've got the mountain influences. Our vineyards range from being at about 500 feet. I'm like just under 2,000 feet. There's a historical significance to Ramona. Grapes were grown up there years and years ago. And if you go around Ramona and you pay attention, you'll start to see olive trees and really old grapevines.
Is there a particular varietal that is unique to Ramona?
Yes, Sangiovese.
That's the one where you.
That's- yeah.
qualities.
And Sangiovese is not typically seen much out of Italy, but it grows very well in Ramona. Yeah, good question.
Building on Craig's question about the value of certification, what is the cost been to you roughly? I mean,
Yeah, it's expensive. I would say it's about $3,000 to $4,000 a year to be certified. So we have to pay for an auditor to come out, go through the certification process. Using materials that were perhaps different than what we might have used as traditional farmers. And then if I quantified my time, I couldn't even imagine it. I know most large wineries actually have a sustainability officer, and that's their full-time job. So. All right, do I have time? Oh, question, sorry.
Just one question.
Yeah.
Since that's so much work year over year to be certified, through their certification, is it like a heavy front load for 5 years we do this and then we do every 2, or it's every year?
It's every year, but they're very, there are some things you can't be doing. They have a list of pesticides, red, yellow pesticides. So you can't be certified sustainable if you choose to use some of the things that are on their list. So there's definitely a threshold, and you'll go through the auditing process. And if you don't hit the threshold, you can't be certified sustainable. So, but other than that, if you hit the minimums, then they'll work with you to develop the action plans to get better and better each year.
Thank you for your great presentation. It was amazing to see the leadership you guys are taking.
Thank you.
I am not from the US, so like that's why I'm asking what I was asking. Like in your definition of different forms of agriculture, you listed those that you listed, but like the name of the conversation in Europe is regeneration, right? Like the next big thing is regeneration, and also that's the term resource conservation industry that I'm with is using. So yeah, clearly, like it's not important for you. I'm just wondering about your customers' thoughts on this, like is sustainable or actually yet and
I think so. I think regenerative farming is just starting to be known. And also, as I understand it, like for me, my property was bare land. So I didn't need to restore anything. I just needed to respect what was going on. And as I understand it, regenerative is oftentimes taking something and bringing it back to good health. Would that be correct?
there are many.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think it's something I'm learning more about.